How to Read a Book. A Guide to Reading the Great Books. By Mortimer J. Adler. 1966 Special Edition. Published in print by Simon & Schuster, New York. From the front flap, 1966. If any man in the world is qualified to write on the subject of reading, and particularly on the subject of reading great books, that man is Dr. Mortimer J. Adler. Dr. Adler is an eminent philosopher, a teacher and the author of a number of bestsellers including How to Read a Book. His knowledge of the great books of history is unparalleled. Using the library facilities of the University of Chicago, in a project sponsored by the Encyclopedia Britannica, Dr. Adler was responsible for developing the revolutionary Synopticon, the first index of ideas in the history of the world. Just as a dictionary indexes words, and an encyclopedia indexes facts, the Synopticon indexes the ideas on which Western civilization is based, making it possible for a reader to compare the thoughts of all the great men of some 3,000 years, on any subject, in a matter of moments. The Synopticon was developed at considerable cost in time, effort and money. The study which Dr. Adler directed took nearly 8 years, a total of some 400,000 man-hours of work, and cost over $1 million. Producing the Synopticon involved reading and rereading all the great books many times over. One of the most fascinating conclusions to come out of this study was the observation that our complex Western civilization revolves around only 102 great ideas. All other concepts are subtropics of these great ideas. In this special edition of How to Read a Book, I can make clear what was not entirely clear when the book was first published in 1940. Readers of the book knew, though its title did not indicate this with complete accuracy, that the subject was not how to read any book, but how to read a great book. In 1940 the time was not yet ripe for such a title, with which the book might not have reached the large audience that it did. Today, with hundreds of thousands of American families engaged in reading and discussing the great books that alone require the kind of reading described, the situation is much changed. I have therefore added a new subtitle for this edition, A Guide to Reading the Great Books. How to Read a Book attempts to inculcate skills that are useful for reading anything. These skills, however, are more than merely useful, they are necessary for the reading of great books, those that are of enduring interest and importance. Although one can read books, magazines, and newspapers of transient interest without these skills, the possession of them enables the reader to read even the transient with greater speed, precision, and discrimination. The art of reading analytically, interpretively, and critically is indispensable only for the kind of reading by which the mind passes from a state of understanding less to a state of understanding more, and for reading the few books that are capable of being read with increasing. 7. 8. Preface. Profit over and over again. Those few books are the great books, and the rules of reading here set forth are the rules for reading them. The illustrations that I have given to guide the reader in applying the rules all refer to the great books. When this book was written, it was based on 20 years of experience in reading and discussing the great books at Columbia University, at the University of Chicago, and St. John's College in Annapolis, as well as with a number of adult groups. Since then the number of adult groups has multiplied by the thousands. Since then many more colleges and universities, as well as secondary schools all over the country, have introduced courses devoted to reading and discussing the great books, for they have come to be recognized as the core of a liberal and humanistic education. But, though these are all advances in American education for which we have good reason to be grateful, the most important educational event since 1940 has been, in my judgment, the publication and distribution by Encyclopedia Britannica, Incorporated, of great books of the Western world, which has brought the great books into hundreds of thousands of American homes, and into almost every public and school library. To celebrate the fact, this new edition of How to Read a Book carries a new appendix that lists the contents of great books of the Western world, and also, accordingly, a revised version of Chapter 16. Turn to page 373 and you will find the great books listed there by author and title in chronological order and divided into 4 main groups: imaginative literature, poetry, fiction, and drama, history and social science, natural science and mathematics, philosophy and theology. Preface 9. Since 1952, when Great Books of the Western World was published, Encyclopaedia Britannica has added a companion set of books, consisting of shorter masterpieces in all fields of literature and learning, properly entitled Gateway to the Great Books. You will find the contents of this set also listed in the appendix, beginning on page 379. The present book is, as its subtitle indicates, a guide to reading the things that most deserve careful reading and rereading, and that is why I recommend it to anyone who owns Great Books of the Western World and Gateway to the Great Books. But the owner of these sets has other tools at hand to help him. The Syntopicon, comprising volumes 2 and 3 of Great Books of the Western World, is a different kind of guide to reading. How to read a book is intended to help the reader read a single great book through cover to cover. The Syntopicon helps the reader read through the whole collection of great books by reading what they have to say on any 1,300 topics of general human interest, organized under 102 Great Ideas. You will find the 102 Great Ideas listed on the jacket of this book. Volume A of Gateway to the Great Books contains a syntopical guide that serves a similar purpose for that set of shorter masterpieces. One other Britannica publication deserves brief mention here. Unlike each year's bestsellers that are out of date 1 year later, the great books are the perennials of literature relevant to the problems that human beings face in every year of every century. That is the way they should be read for the light they throw upon human life and human society, past, present, and future. And that is why Britannica publishes an annual volume, entitled The Great Ideas Today, the aim of which is to illustrate the striking relevance of the great books and the great ideas to contemporary events and issues, and to the latest advances in the arts and sciences. With all these aids to reading and to understanding, the accumulated wisdom of our Western civilization is within the reach of anyone who has the willingness to put them to good use. Chicago, September, 1965. Mortimer J. Adler. Table of Contents. Part I. The activity of reading page. To the average reader, 3. The reading of reading, 16. Reading is learning, 33. Teachers, dead or alive, 48. The defeat of the schools, 65. On self-help, 101. Part 2. The rules. From many rules to one habit, 119. Catching on from the title, 140. Seeing the skeleton, 160. Coming to terms, 185. What's the proposition and why, 209. The etiquette of talking back, 235. The things the reader can say, 251. And still more rules, 266. Part 3. The rest of the reader's life. The other half, 295. The Great Books, 322. Free Minds and Free Men, 354. Appendix, Great Books of the Western World. Gateway to the Great Books, the authors and the titles, 373. Great Books of the Western World. Gateway to the Great Books. The authors and the titles. Authors and titles in Great Books of the Western World. Arranged chronologically within categories. Imaginative Literature. Homer, the Iliad, the Odyssey, Aeschylus, Complete Plays Sophocles, Complete Plays Euripides, Complete Plays Aristophanes, Complete Plays. Virgil, the Eclogues, the Georgics, the Aeneid. Dante, the Divine Comedy. Chaucer, Troilus and Crusade, the Canterbury Tales, Rabelais, Gargantuan and Pantagruel Shakespeare, complete plays, sonnets servants, Don Quixote. Milton, English minor poems, Paradise Lost, Samson Agonis, Areopagitica. Swift, Gulliver's Travels Fielding, Tom Jones Sterne, Tristram Shandy. 374. Goethe, Faust Melville, Moby Dick Tolstoy, War and Peace. Dostoevsky, The Brothers Karamazov. History and Social Science. Herodotus, The History. Thucydides, The History of the Peloponnesian War. Plutarch, Complete Lives Tacitus, The Annals, The Histories Machiavelli, The Prince Montaigne, Complete Essays Hobbies, Leviathan Montesquieu, The Spirit of Laws. Rousseau, A Discourse on the Origin of Inequality, A Discourse on Political Economy, The Social Contract. Smith, The Wealth of Nations. Gibbon, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. The Declaration of Independence, Articles of Confederation, The Constitution of the United States of America. Boswell, The Life of Samuel Johnson, LL.D. Hamilton, Madison, and J., The Federalist Mill, on Liberty, Representative Government, Utilitarianism. Marx, Capital. Marx and Engels, Manifesto of the Communist Party. Natural Science and Mathematics. Hippocrates, Complete Works Euclid, Elements Archimedes, Complete Writings. Apollonius of Perga, on Conic Sections Nicomachus, Introduction to Arithmetic Galen, on the Natural Faculties Ptolemy, the Almagist. Copernicus, on the Revolutions of the Heavenly Spheres. Gilbert, on the Lodestone. Galileo, To New Sciences. Kepler, Epitome of Copernican Astronomy, The Harmonies of the World. Harvey, Medical Writings. Huygens, Treatise on Light. Newton, Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy, Optics. Lavoisier, Elements of Chemistry. Fourier, Analytical Theory of Heat. Faraday, Experimental Researches in Electricity. Darwin, The Origin of Species, The Descent of Man. James, The Principles of Psychology. Freud, Major Works. Philosophy and Theology. Plato, Complete Dialogues, The Seventh Letter. Aristotle, Complete Works. Lucretius, On the Nature of Things. Epictetus, The Discourses. Marcus Aurelius, The Meditations. Plotinus, The Six Aeneids. Street. Augustine, The Confessions, The City of God, On Christian Doctrine. Aquinas, Summa Theologica. Bacon, Advancement of Learning, Novum Organum, New Atlantis. Descartes, Philosophical Works, The Geometry. Pascal, The Provincial Letters, Penses, Scientific Works. Spinoza, Ethics. Locke, A Letter Concerning Toleration, Concerning Civil Government, An Essay Concerning Human Understanding. Berkeley, The Principles of Human Knowledge. Hume, An Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding. Kant, Major Philosophical Works. Hegel, The Philosophy of Right, The Philosophy of History. Authors and titles in Gateway to the Great Books. Arranged alphabetically within categories. Imaginative Literature. Sherwood Anderson, I'm a Fool. Anonymous, Aucassin and Nicolette. Lucius Apuleius, Cupid and Psyche, from the Golden Ass. Honora Delaware Balzac, A Passion in the Desert. Ivan Bunin, The Gentleman from San Francisco. Samuel Butler, Customs and Opinions of the Aruhonians, from Aruhan. Anton Chekhov, The Darling, The Cherry Orchard. Joseph Conrad, Youth. Stephen Crane, The Open Boat. Daniel Defoe, Robinson Crusoe. Charles Dickens, A Full and Faithful Report of the Memorable Trial of Bardell against Pickwick, from the Pickwick Papers. Isaac Denison, Sorrow Acre. Fyodor Dostoevsky, White Nights. 379. George Eliot, The Lifted Veil. F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Diamond as Big as the Ritz. Gustave Flaubert, The Legend of Street. Julian the Hospitaller. John Galsworthy, The Apple Tree. Nikolai Gogol, The Overcoat. Nathaniel Hawthorne, Rappaccini's Daughter. Ernest Hemingway, The Killers. Victor Hugo, The Battle with the Cannon, from 93, Henrik Ibsen, An Enemy of the People. Henry James, The Pupil. Rudyard Kipling, Mowgli's Brothers. D. H. Lawrence, The Rocking Horse winner. Thomas Mann, Mario and the Magician. Guy de Maupassant, Two Friends. Herman Melville, Billy Budd. Molière, The Misanthrope, The Doctor in Spite of Himself. Eugene O'Neill, The Emperor Jones. Edgar Allan Poe, The Telltale Heart, The Mask of the Red Death. Alexander Pushkin, The Queen of Spades. Sir Walter Scott, The Two Drovers. George Bernard Shaw, The Man of Destiny. Richard Sheridan, The School for Scandal. Isaac Singer, The Spinoza of Market Street. Robert Louis Stevenson, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. John M. Synge, Riders to the Sea. Leo Tolstoy, The Death of Ivan Ilyich, The Three Hermits, What Men Live By. Ivan Turgenev, First Love. Mark Twain, The Man That Corrupted Hadleyburg. Voltaire, Micromegas. Oscar Wilde, The Happy Prince. Critical Essays. Matthew Arnold, The Study of Poetry, Sweetness and Light. Sir Francis Bacon, Of Beauty, of Discourse, of Studies. Thomas Delaware Quincy, Literature of Knowledge and Literature of Power, On the Knocking at the Gate in Macbeth. Thomas Stearns Eliot, Dante, Tradition and the Individual Talent. William Hazlitt, My First Acquaintance with Poets, On Swift, of Persons One Would Wish to Have Seen. David Hume, Of the Standard of Taste. Samuel Johnson, Preface to Shakespeare. Charles Lamb, My First Play. Dream Children, A Reverie. Sanity of True Genius. Saint Beuve, What is a Classic? Montaigne. Friedrich Schiller, On Simple and Sentimental Poetry. Arthur Schopenhauer, On Style, On Some Forms of Literature, On the Comparative Place of Interest and Beauty in Works of Art. Percy Bysshe Shelley, A Defense of Poetry. Walt Whitman, Preface to Leaves of Grass. Virginia Woolf, How Should One Read a Book? Man and Society. Henry Adams, The United States in 1800. From History of the United States of America, Sir Francis Bacon, Of Youth and Age, Of Parents and Children, Of Marriage and Single Life, Of Great Place, Of Seditions and Troubles, Of Custom and Education, Of Followers and Friends, Of Usury, Of Riches. Edmund Burke, Letter to the Sheriffs of Bristol. John Bagnall Berry, Herodotus. John C. Calhoun, The Concurrent Majority, From a Disquisition on Government. Thomas Carlyle, The Hero as King. Karl von Clausewitz, What is War? From On War, Jean Delaware Crevecoeur, The Making of Americans, From Letters from an American Farmer. Dante Alighieri, On World Government, From De Monarchia. Ralph Waldo Emerson, Thoreau. Michael Faraday, Observations on Mental Education. Benjamin Franklin, Proposal for Promoting Useful Knowledge Among the British Plantations in America, Proposals Relating to the Education of Youth in Pennsylvania. Great Documents, The English Bill of Rights, Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, the Virginia Declaration of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, Charter of the United Nations, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. François Guizot, Civilization, From History of Civilization in Europe. Nathaniel Hawthorne, Sketch of Abraham Lincoln. David Hume, Of Refinement in the Arts, of Money, of the Balance of Trade, of Taxes, of the Study of History. William James, On a Certain Blindness in Human Beings, the Energies of Men, Great Men and Their Environment. Thomas Jefferson, The Virginia Constitution, From Notes on Virginia, First Inaugural Address, Biographical Sketches. Immanuel Kant, Perpetual Peace. Louisiana Bruyere, Characters. Abraham Lincoln, Address at Cooper Institute, First Inaugural Address, Letter to Horace Greeley, Meditation on the Divine Will, The Gettysburg Address, Second Inaugural Address, Last Public Address. Haniel Long, The Power Within Us. Lucian, The Way to Write History. Thomas Babington Macaulay, Machiavelli. Thomas Robert Malthus, The Principle of Population, From Population, The First Essay. John Stuart Mill, Childhood and Youth, from Autobiography, Thomas Paine, A Call to Patriots, December 23, 1776. From The Crisis, Pliny the Younger, The Eruption of Vesuvius, from Letters. Plutarch, of Bashfulness. William H. Prescott, The Land of Montezuma, from The Conquest of Mexico. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, A Lasting Peace Through the Federation of Europe. John Ruskin, An Idealist's Arraignment of the Age. Arthur Schopenhauer, On Education. Robert Louis Stevenson, The Lantern Bearers. Jonathan Swift, Resolutions When I Come to Be Old, An Essay on Modern Education, A Meditation upon a Broomstick, A Modest Proposal for Preventing the Children of Ireland from Being a Burden to Their Parents or Country. Cornelius Tacitus, The Life of Gnaeus Julius Agricola. Henry David Thoreau, Civil Disobedience, A Plea for Captain John Brown. Alexis Delaware Tocqueville, Observations on American Life and Government, from Democracy in America. Mark Twain, Learning the River, from Life on the Mississippi. Voltaire, English Men and Ideas, from Letters on the English. George Washington, Circular Letter to the Governors of all the States on Disbanding the Army, The Farewell Address. Walt Whitman, Death of Abraham Lincoln. Virginia Woolf, The Art of Biography. Xenophon, The March to the Sea, from the Persian Expedition. The Character of Socrates, from Memorabilia. Natural Science. Sir Francis Bacon, The Sphinx. Claude Bernard, Experimental Considerations Common to Living Things and Inorganic Bodies. Kees Boek, Cosmic View. Tommaso Campanella, Arguments for and Against Galileo, from The Defense of Galileo. Rachel L. Carson, The Sunless Sea, from The Sea Around Us. Eve Curie, The Discovery of Radium. Charles Robert Darwin, Autobiography. Sir Arthur Eddington, The Running Down of the Universe. Albert Einstein and Leopold Infeld, The Rise and Decline of Classical Physics, from The Evolution of Physics. Lauren Isley, On Time, from The Immense Journey. Jean Henry Faber, A Laboratory of the Open Fields, The Sacred Beetle. Michael Faraday, The Chemical History of a Candle. Galileo Galilei, The Starry Messenger. Sir Francis Galton, The Classification of Human Ability, from Hereditary Genius. B. S. Haldane, On Being the Right Size. H. L. F. von Helmholtz, On the Conservation of Force. Thomas Henry Huxley, On the Relations of Man to the Lower Animals, On a Piece of Chalk. Sir James Jeans, Beginnings and Endings. Sir Charles Lyell, Geological Evolution, from The Principles of Geology. Dmitry Mendeleev, The Genesis of a Law of Nature, from the Periodic Law of the Chemical Elements. Ivan Petrovich Pavlov, Scientific Study of the So-Called Psychical Processes in the Higher Animals. John Tyndall, Michael Faraday, From Faraday as a Discoverer. Friedrich Wöhler, On the Artificial Production of Urea. Mathematics. Norman Robert Campbell, Measurement, Numerical Laws and the Use of Mathematics in Science. William Kingdon Clifford, The Postulates of the Science of Space. Tobias Dantzig, Fingerprints, The Empty Column. Leonhard Euler, The Seven Bridges of Königsberg. Andrew Russell Forsyth, Mathematics, in Life and Thought. Lancelot Hogben, Mathematics, The Mirror of Civilization. Edward Kastner and James R. Newman, New Names for Old, Beyond the Go-A-Gal. Pierre Simon Delaware Laplace, Probability, from a Philosophical Essay on Probabilities. Charles Sanders Peirce, The Red and the Black. Henry Poincare, Space, Mathematical Creation, Chance. Bertrand Russell, The Study of Mathematics, Mathematics and the Metaphysicians, Definition of Number. Alfred North Whitehead, On Mathematical Method, from an Introduction to Mathematics, On the Nature of a Calculus. Philosophical Essays. Henry Adams, Street. Thomas Aquinas. Sir Francis Bacon, Of Truth, of Death, of Adversity, of Love, of Friendship, of Anger. Sir Thomas Browne, Immortality, from Urn Burial. Cicero, on Friendship, on Old Age. William Kingdon Clifford, The Ethics of Belief. John Dewey, The Process of Thought, from How We Think. Ralph Waldo Emerson, Nature, Self-Reliance, Montaigne, or The Skeptic. Epictetus, The Enchiridion. Epicurus, Letter to Herodotus, Letter to Manuisus. John Erskine, The Moral Obligation to Be Intelligent. William Hazlitt, On the Feeling of Immortality and Youth. William James, The Will to Believe, The Sentiment of Rationality. John Stuart Mill, Nature. Walter Horatio Pater, The Art of Life, from The Renaissance. Plutarch, Contentment. George Santayana, Lucretius, Goethe's Faust. Voltaire, The Philosophy of Common Sense, from Philosophical Dictionary. Biography of Mortimer J. Adler, 1966, about the author. Born in New York City in 1902, Mortimer J. Adler was educated in the schools of that city and at Columbia University, where he received his Ph.D. in 1929. He taught at Columbia from 1923 until 1930, when he went to the University of Chicago at the invitation of Robert M. Hutchins. With President Hutchins, he developed the Great Books program, helped to establish the Great Books Foundation, and was instrumental in instigating many educational reforms. He surrendered his professorship at the University of Chicago in 1952 to found the Institute for Philosophical Research, of which he is now director. He is associate editor of Encyclopaedia Britannica's Great Books of the Western World and, with Mr. Hutchins, editor of Great Ideas Today and Gateway to the Great Books. He invented and edited the Syntopicon, to which he contributed 102 essays on the great ideas of Western civilization. As director of the Institute, he authored its first major publication, The Idea of Freedom, in 2 volumes. He has written many philosophical books, beginning with Dialectic in 1927 and including Art and Prudence, What Man Has Made of Men, St. Thomas and the Gentiles, and A Dialectic of Morals. His works also include The Capitalist Manifesto, written with Louis O. Kelso, and How to Read a Book, which headed the bestseller list in 1940 and has been in demand ever since. From the Back Flap, 1966, The Great Ideas. Angel. Hypothesis. Poetry. Animal. Idea. Principle. Aristocracy. Immortality. Progress. Art. Induction. Prophecy. Astronomy. Infinity. Prudence. Beauty. Judgment. Punishment. Being. Justice. Quality. Cause. Knowledge. Quantity. Chance. Labor. Reasoning. Change. Language. Relation. Citizen. Law. Religion. Constitution. Liberty. Revolution. Courage. Life and death. Rhetoric. Custom and logic. Same and other. Convention. Love. Science. Definition. Man. Sense. Democracy. Mathematics. Sign and symbol. Desire. Matter. Sin. Dialectic. Mechanics. Slavery. Duty. Medicine. Soul. Education. Memory and space. Element. Imagination. State. Emotion. Metaphysics. Temperance. Eternity. Mind. Theology. Evolution. Monarchy. Time. Experience. Nature. Truth. Family. Necessity and tyranny. Fate. Contingency. Universal and form. Oligarchy. Particular. God. One and many. Virtue and peace. Good and evil. Opinion. War and peace. Government. Opposition. Wealth. Habit. Philosophy. Will. Happiness. Physics. Wisdom. History. Pleasure and world, honor, pain,